economic system of the United States has performed well over the past century. Many factors account for this fine performance, including a productive labor force, a generous endowment of natural resources, and an ample supply of risk capital attracted by the opportunity to earn a profit. But to many observers, the most significant factor explaining American economic success is business leadership. In order to gain insight into the phenomenon of business leadership, we are going to study the examples of 7 successful businesses located in Aurora, Illinois. These cases will illustrate 4 major responsibilities of business leadership: creating customers, earning a profit for investors, providing satisfaction for workers, and providing volunteer civic leadership. All of these Aurora companies have performed well in all 4 dimensions, but only a few of the firms will be used to illustrate each point. Perhaps the most salient characteristic of the American free enterprise system is its consumer orientation. The business manager's first and foremost responsibility is to create and keep customers. What is involved in creating customers? The history of Aurora Metal Company provides one answer. In 1899, Aurora Metal was founded by Dr. Russell Colby and Dr. Gustav Turnauer. Within a few years, they had been joined by Anton Christensen, who helped them develop a piston rod packing product for sale to the railroad. For many years, the piston rod packing business was a dependable source of profit, particularly after Dr. Turnauer devised a new packing material shortly before World War I. In the mid-1930s, a major change in railroad technology threatened to put Aurora Metal out of business. The change took the form of the diesel locomotive replacing the steam locomotive. As the steam locomotives began to disappear, the market for piston rod packing began to shrink. Under new President A.W. Lauder, Aurora Metal responded by looking for a new market to enter. The company decided to develop a vacuum die casting process for aluminum bronze alloys. While developing this new process, President Lauder hired a young metallurgical engineer from Detroit to help with technical problems. That engineer's name was George Peters. By 1948, the vacuum die casting process had become a commercial success. By that time also, George Peters had become a vice president of the company, and the subsequent course of events at Aurora Metal became very much a reflection of Peters' thinking. Under Peters' leadership, growth became a top priority goal at Aurora Metal. It was clear that rapid growth could not be based on the vacuum casting process alone. Hence, Peters and his close associate, engineer Frank Lewis, added a shell mold process to the company's technology and decided to continue to use the conventional permanent mold casting process. In order to create the customers needed for growth, Peters adopted the strategy of differentiating the Aurora Metal product from its many competitors through design innovation, quality, and service. Higher quality castings were to be one of the Aurora Metal's strongest selling points because the higher quality would mean less machining of the finished part, and this would give the customer a cost saving. The key to finding potential customers was the sales trip. Every 2 or 3 weeks, either Peters or Lewis would make a trip to visit with existing customers and meet with potential new customers. Each trip would involve visits to the potential customer's production facility, where Peters or Lewis would look for parts that Aurora Metal had the potential to produce. Samples of such parts would be brought back to Aurora, and Peters, Lewis, and their colleagues would attempt to find a method whereby Aurora Metal could produce that part at a competitive price. The key to getting the potential customer's business was making an attractive bid. This required Aurora Metal to be able to estimate production costs with a relatively high degree of accuracy. The key to keeping the customer's business was follow-up service. Peters wanted the customer to think of Aurora Metal as one of the customer's own departments that could be depended upon for quick, reliable service. The Aurora Metal strategy for creating customers and thereby generating growth was highly successful, particularly between 1960 and 1974, when sales grew at a rate in excess of 10% a year. Part of the growth was unplanned, such as the decision in 1959 to enter into production of coated sand for the production of shell molds and cores. But the underlying expansion was based on the implementation of Peters' original strategy. George Peters' approach to the management task of creating customers was to expand the company's product line. An alternative strategy usually used by larger companies is to reduce the product line and seek growth through specialization on a more limited range of products. The history of All Steel illustrates this approach to creating customers. In 1912, All Steel was founded by three Aurorans who were working for Lion Metal Company. In 1914, one of the three, Charles Lemke, joined with John Cannell, then president of the Aurora Brewing Company, to buy out the other original founders. For the next 2 decades, Lemke and Cannell created customers by expanding the product line from electrical cutout boxes to water cooler cabinets, boiler jackets, kitchen cabinets, office cabinets, lockers, and other sheet metal products. In 1933, All Steel purchased the Roach Appleton Manufacturing Company in South Bend, Indiana, and thereby greatly expanded the firm's electrical equipment business. And in 1936, All Steel bought the Aurora Metal Cabinet Company, and thereby made a significant entry into the office equipment business. World War II temporarily arrested All Steel's expansion. Steel was a high-priority defense material, and like most other sheet metal fabricators, All Steel turned its efforts to producing defense products. As World War II drew to a close, however, John Cannell and his management team had to make a major decision regarding their Aurora plant. Should their strategy be to expand both lines, shop fixtures and office furniture? Or should All Steel concentrate its efforts on one or the other of the major markets it was then serving? Cannell and his management team of Frank McGowan and M.H. Snyder decided to concentrate on the Grade A office furniture market. This decision was based on the belief that the Aurora plant could not simultaneously excel at producing and marketing both product lines. Once the decision to concentrate was made, events moved rapidly at All Steel. In 1947, the first desk appeared. In 1948, Carl Gruby was brought in from Douglas Aircraft to serve as Vice President of Engineering and Production. 2 years later, All Steel introduced a 50-inch desk that had a major impact on the industry. Bookcases, telephone stands, and credenzas were added, and in 1953 chairs were introduced to round out the office furniture line. From that point on, under the leadership of Carl Gruby, All Steel's growth strategy consisted of creating customers for the basic line. To do so, All Steel counted on its price competitiveness, its innovative design, and an intensive sales effort that utilized carefully selected manufacturers' representatives. Later, as the company grew to a very large size, financial controls were to become a key element in the All Steel success story. All Steel's strategy worked, and by the mid-1960s, the firm had become one of the 3 largest firms in the industry. In 1966, All Steel's common stock was sold to CIT Financial Corporation, but management continued to be supplied by Aurorans Carl Gruby and, in the mid-1970s, J.H. Hartman. At about the same time that All Steel began its successful strategy of creating customers in one end of the sheet steel fabricating industry, another Aurora firm began a similar effort in the segment of the industry that All Steel had decided to abandon. The firm was Equipto. Equipto had been founded by Thomas Dunham in 1907. Dunham's original products were motorcycle sidecars and replacement parts for Ford automobiles. Business in the original product lines declined precipitously in the early 1930s, but Tom Dunham was able to find a new, profitable product line in the form of shelving and store fixtures. Tom's son John grew up working at various tasks in the business on a part-time basis, and in 1931, when John graduated from college, he joined Equipto as the firm's only full-time salesman. In 1944, John Dunham became a president of Equipto. His primary concern was to formulate a growth strategy. The strategy took 2 years to develop into its final form, but by 1946, John Dunham had a clear view of how he was going to create customers. This strategy consisted of 4 basic elements. First, a decision to concentrate on serving the storage needs of manufacturers. Second, an organized research and development effort designed to create the products that would better meet the potential customers' storage needs. Third, a greatly expanded marketing effort that not only looked for ways in which Equipto's products could serve manufacturers' needs, but which would also look for unsatisfied needs for which Equipto could produce new products. And fourth, plowing back profits to invest in production and marketing capacities. Well, the strategy worked. By the early 1970s, Equipto was one of the largest firms in its industry, with John Dunham still active in the firm's management and Jack Dunham sharing the management responsibilities. A final example of what is involved in creating a customer is provided by the experience of Barber Green. This company was founded in 1916 by Harry Barber and William B. Green. Barber and Green had both graduated from the University of Illinois as mechanical engineers. Both were employed at a prominent Aurora manufacturing firm, Stevens Adamson. Stevens Adamson manufactured custom-designed material handling equipment, and both Barber and Green became intrigued by the possibility of mass-producing such equipment and thereby lowering unit costs of production. After much discussion, the two men decided to establish their own business. They set up shop in the guest room at Harry Barber's home and began work on the prototype of their first product, a portable belt conveyor for use in coal yards. There followed more than a decade of profitable growth, with Barber's inventive genius developing new products to meet consumer needs, and Green's management skills building the marketing and financial side of the business. In 1929, Barber Green became aware of the potential market for asphalt paving equipment. During the Depression years that followed, there was not much demand for such equipment, but Barber and Green saw the long-run potential of the product, and so they made a commitment to continue the development work on the product despite the company's precarious financial condition caused by the nationwide depression. In Green's words, while development expense was greatly reduced, we never considered its elimination. That was our seed corn, the source of future earnings. The investment in development paid off at the end of the 1930s. First, construction related to World War II created a demand for the Barber Green paving equipment. Next, the post-war road building boom developed, and Barber Green was ready with the product the customer wanted. Throughout the 1950s and into the 1960s, Barber Green prospered by meeting the huge demand for asphalt paving equipment. Earning a profit is the second major responsibility of management. In order to create customers, the business leader must first attract capital, either his own savings or funds provided by outsiders. If the business is to survive, management must be able to earn an acceptable profit on that investment. If it does not, the business will not be able to attract new funds for expansion and modernization and will eventually go out of business. Hence, earning a profit becomes a primary responsibility of management. In a sense, earning a normal profit is the cost of doing business. The recent history of Barber Green illustrates the way in which good management handles this responsibility. As Barber Green expanded rapidly during the 1950s, it became clear to W. B. Green and Ash Barber, who succeeded his father Harry in the top management team, that continued growth would require either a merger with a publicly held company or a public stock offering. Barber Green's management decided to make a public offering, and in 1959, the company successfully went public. The first few years following the public offering were good ones for the company. But by the mid-1960s, Barber Green's environment began to change. The overall growth of demand in the industries served by Barber Green began to decline. At the same time, competition was increasing. These changes were communicated to Barber Green's management in the form of a decline in the corporation's earnings, and management, under the leadership of Ash Barber, reacted by first analyzing the causes of the decline in earnings and then taking the actions needed to restore profits to acceptable levels. By the mid-1970s, Barber and his management team had restored profit levels by phasing out unprofitable product lines, developing new, more profitable products, finding various new methods of cutting costs, and decentralizing the top management decision-making process. This episode in the history of Barber Green illustrates the power of the profit mechanism in helping the responsible business leader to make wise use of the resources he controls. Indeed, it is the lack of a profit mechanism that makes it difficult for well-meaning government administrators to make equally wise use of the resources provided by the taxpayers. Darby Iron Works offers an example of small business management fulfilling its profit responsibilities. This small business was founded in 1919 by Frank Garby. Its original business was supplying steel I-beams and structural shapes to the local construction industry. Garby's son Jim started to work with his father in 1950 and later became president of the firm. For more than a decade, Jim Garby continued to use the production technology that his father had used. But the environment was changing. The industry was growing and becoming more competitive. As a result, price increases could not keep pace with rising costs. It became apparent, says Jim Garby, that we were going to have to find a way to be competitive if we wanted to stay in the structural fabricating business. We recognized that we had to cut production time on our fabrication process. And so Garby and his associates Rod Campbell and Terry Pisha began a search for cost-cutting techniques of production. They found one in the form of a beam line machine that significantly reduced handling time and therefore cost. This system was purchased in 1973. In the following years, additional capital equipment was added to other parts of the production process, thus boosting labor productivity and reducing costs. Garby's capital investment program significantly enlarged the firm's production capacity and created a need to find new customers. Garby responded by launching an intensive marketing effort that included heavy advertising and an emphasis on customer service. The Garby example points out one of the most appealing features of the profit system. That is, the system produces strong incentives to find ways to boost labor productivity. Management's third responsibility is to make the employees' work productive and satisfying. Quite often, these two tasks go together. As Pat Patterson, United Airlines' famed builder, once put it, we know that the people want a sense of fulfillment in their work. We know that the man who is placed in a job he enjoys will do more than the job requires. Lion Metal Products provides an interesting example of how management practices have developed over the years with respect to this area of responsibility. Lion was founded in 1901 when 25-year-old Beverly Lyon Waters purchased $100 worth of equipment and set up a sheet metal shop in the basement of his parents' home in Chicago. Within a year, he was joined by his brother Frank. The business prospered, and in 1906, the Waters brothers decided to move their headquarters to Aurora, Illinois. For the next 3 decades, the firm successfully manufactured a variety of sheet steel products, including shelving lockers, tool racks, and cabinets. During that time, relations with employees were handled in a paternalistic fashion by Frank Waters. In 1935, Frank Waters died. 5 years later, B.L. Waters retired, and Earl Power succeeded him as president. Power brought with him a new concept of dealing with employees, and under his leadership, Lion Metal Products adopted an employee relations philosophy that has since become recognized as the modern way of carrying out management's responsibility towards employees. This new philosophy was based on an attitude of mutual understanding and respect between management and labor. A specific personnel management position was created, and in 1954, this job was made a vice presidential assignment. The first man who accepted this position, Neil Ormond, was given the assignment of establishing an atmosphere of open, honest communications and fair dealing in all labor management relations. Management expected labor to be productive and responsible, and could become hard-nosed with workers who shirked their responsibilities or made unrealistic demands on the company. But management started with the assumption that most workers wanted to be productive and responsible. Hence, management was willing to discuss issues and to admit that management was wrong when such was the case. As a result, collective bargaining at Lion Metal was conducted on an unusually high plane. Lion Metal Products' new approach to personnel management also involved the development of numerous procedures, benefit programs, and improvements in working conditions. These were the applied side of management's deliberate attempt to fulfill its responsibility to the worker. These developments flowed naturally from the new philosophy. Job satisfaction was also developed at the top management level. Power and the Lion directors gathered a group of top corporate officers that was cohesive and productive. They regularly met to make corporate decisions, and at those meetings the discussions were frank and open. Yet the discussions were also friendly and supportive of the individuals involved. There was a team spirit that made it possible for the executive committee to discuss sensitive issues and make hard decisions without fear of hurting feelings or jeopardizing political alliances. Lion Metal Products' responsible approach to personnel management started with Earl Power, and was continued through the successive presidencies of H.B. Spackman, L.D. Deal, J.M. Olson, and Tom Conklin, and continues today under President Al Wallen. The Lion philosophy remains basically unchanged because it works. And it works because it is based upon a recognition that concepts like integrity, respect, and fairness are important for business success. The Lion Metal example illustrates the case of management fulfilling its responsibility to the worker in the case of a fairly large business firm. In the case of the small business firm, there is an extra element added. That element is the satisfaction of the owner-manager. The case of Hayden Sports Center illustrates this point. Upon graduation from North Central College in 1940, Dick Hayden became a high school science teacher and coach. In 1943, he interrupted his teaching career to join the Army Air Corps. After the war, Dick Hayden was invited to become a partner in a sporting goods store with his old high school coach, Homer Swayze. Hayden accepted the offer, and for the next 2 decades, he and Swayze ran a profitable small business. Although the business was creating customers and earning a profit, there was a missing ingredient as far as Dick Hayden was concerned. Put bluntly, Dick was not enjoying the work as much as he felt he should. The partnership arrangement involved compromises in philosophy and business goals. In 1965, the situation changed when Homer Swayze retired. This left Dick Hayden in a position to implement his own business philosophy and pursue his own business goals without the need to compromise. Pursue them he did. During the next 7 years, Dick Hayden worked harder than he ever had before, trying to expand his business. Paradoxically, Dick Hayden was also happier than he'd ever been before. He was happy because he was doing what he wanted to do. He was happy because he was doing it his way. And, of course, he was happy because during those 7 years, the sales volume of Hayden Sports Center grew by over 400%. Small businessman Dick Hayden had successfully managed his personal affairs, thereby making him happier and more productive. The final responsibility of the business leader is civic leadership. Many students of the subject would say that this is not, in fact, a responsibility of business leaders. But that was not the way that Aurora's business leaders looked at it. These men found themselves in positions of influence. They found themselves possessed of leadership skills, and they recognized the possibility that if they did not provide civic leadership, many needed civic projects and programs would fail to achieve their potential. Finally, these men realized that in the absence of such civic leadership, Aurora might lose its attractiveness as a community in which to work and live, and this loss might eventually make it difficult for businesses to attract high-quality employees. Because these men recognized the need, and because they identified strongly with their community, they fulfilled their civic leadership responsibilities. Bill Green's career is an example. He devoted his time and financial support to the local Boy Scouts, serving as president of the local council and eventually earning the coveted Silver Beaver Award. He also provided financial support to the Girl Scouts and was rewarded with an honorary membership. He served as an active director of the Council of Community Services, the Board of Directors of Aurora College, and the Board of Directors of the Associated Colleges of Illinois. He was co-founder and first president of the Aurora Foundation. He served on the Board of Directors of the United Fund. He was chairman of the Local Recreation Commission and made generous financial contributions to support local recreational facilities. In addition to providing such leadership, Bill Green and his management associates at Barbara Green contributed large sums to civic projects and local organizations too numerous to mention. Anybody starting a new civic project would almost always begin by approaching Barbara Green and the other local manufacturers for financial support. And ongoing programs such as the United Way counted on the same local industries for continuing support of their programs. The response of Aurora's business leaders was usually very generous. As a result, Aurora, Illinois continued to be a very fine community in which to work and live. We have seen how, in the process of fulfilling their management responsibilities, the managers of 7 Aurora, Illinois businesses have raised the quality of life for their customers, their employees, their investors, and their community. These business leaders used the freedom granted them in a socially responsible manner, and as a result contributed to the happiness and welfare of their generation. For future generations, the most important legacy of these successful business leaders is the fact that through their outstanding performances, they have helped to preserve the American free enterprise system.